Hello and welcome to Constitutional Cappuccino, the wake-up call to the Constitution and the ideals it espouses. My name is Frank Caprio. I'm going to be your host. Today, I'm going to talk about the vision of conservatism and what a conservative environment would actually look like. Instead of dissecting the Constitution, in this discussion, I'm going to talk about my vision, what our country would look like if we actually got back to the conservative values that we were founded on, and why getting back to those values is vital for a prosperous and free United States. First, what is conservatism? There are plenty of definitions out there. The one I like to use is the idea of conserving the ideals contained in the founding documents of our country. The Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, the ideals contained in those documents exemplify why our country was founded and why has been as prosperous and free as it has been throughout the years. These ideals, for instance, the ideal of a limited government, a government created by the states for a specific purpose of handling tasks that the states thought would be better for a central power to handle. A government that is circumscribed by Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution which created it. Another ideal, a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. A government where the people get together on a regular basis and elect their representatives to form a government which hopefully will do good things for the people. A government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Get back to the ideals is that the reason that we tolerate governments is for them to secure our rights. Rights are given to us by God. They are not given to us by government. They are not given to us by other men. The rights that we possess are inalienable and cannot be taken away by man nor government. And for this reason, we tolerate government to secure these rights. That when any government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such forms as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. So in a conservative world, if we were to take what we're doing right now and put a conservative overlay on it, what would be different about that world than what we see today? One of the first things I would say is that people would realize that ultimately, everything that happens in these United States is on the people. That we are responsible for what we are realizing right now. We, the people, are the power in these United States. And if things are going wrong, it is ultimately we, the people, who are responsible for it. It's not the police. It's not the politicians. It's not the court system. It's the people. We have allowed our servants to get out of control. Sure. All the people that I just mentioned, the police, the politicians, the courts, all of that, they all have, proper roles in our society. But to rely on them exclusively to make sure our lives, are that we're staying as prosperous and that we are, keeping our rights in place. Government is never going to do that. They have never done that throughout history. Most people up to a few generations ago realized that government is the problem, not the solution. If government can give it to you, government can take it away. That when governments get so big and so pervasive, they invariably become tyrannical. That is the nature of government. Government is a force, and if you don't lead it, sure, you can have a dog, but what happens? That dog goes wild on you. You can have a dog and you can keep it under control, and you have a great companion for life, somebody that you love and trust, and feel real sad when they leave. Or You can leave it out in the backyard or, with your neighbor who teaches it to be mean and nasty. And that same dog that could be your best companion for life could be something that's going to bite you and hurt you every time you get close to it. And that's all government is a force. Unfortunately, that force is run by people. You are subject to human nature. And again, I'll say that human nature has never changed. There's still greedy, evil, nasty people out there, just like there are, very honorable and giving and caring people out there. That has never changed. But what has changed is the attitude of that government is a good thing. This happened, we need government to come. No, no, no. I mean, in a conservative world, it isn't like, what can government do for us? It's like, the exact thing would be, what can we do for people? What can people do to help people? What can we do to get government out of the way at this point? I mean, with the obtrusive government that we have, the conversations we should be having is, what can we do to get government out of the way so people can help people? I'll go to a case here in Central Florida. We had a pastor who was arrested for feeding the homeless. I mean, to me, that is just on every level, that is just ridiculous. The reasoning was that if you feed the homeless and you're going to attract the homeless, you're going to get more homeless in your area, and then it's going to be a problem. That's the way government thinks. No, no, no. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But it wasn't allowed when that instance came up. A lot of people decided, finally enough is enough, and time to get up and say, no, we're going to do what we need to do. We're going to support this pastor, and you're not going to not allow us to feed the homeless. The problem is that we have homeless. It isn't that they're gathering in a certain spot. We had another instance up in Seminole County. We have a group of people who want to pass ordinances to make the panhandlers get licenses so they can panhandle. They want to get people who are out begging for money on the street to pay money for a license so they can beg. I mean, to me, that gets to the maddening section of life. What are these people thinking? I mean, they're thinking they want to get the panhandlers and the people off the corners of the street. They don't want to look at them, but they're not addressing the problem. They're using the force of government to get stuff done that they want done, and they're not thinking it through. A good conservative ideal in that situation would be, you know what? Government isn't taxing me so much. They're a small government. They're leaving a lot of things to the states or to the people to do. So I don't have a lot of regulations. I'm making good money. I have some savings, so I'm going to take some of that out of the altruism of my heart, and I'm going to help this person. Or I'm going to help with a group of people at a church or another organization. Churches used to be a very big helper. I mean, they still are, but they're constrained in what they can do. If they're going to take government money. You start taking government money, you start living by government regulations. So you can't do certain things that other free people can or other free organizations can. I'm going to say I'm going to take some of my resources, which I have an abundance of because we're a very prosperous nation. I'm going to take some of those and I'm going to help some of these people. And that's the way things used to happen. Family, friends, churches, other social organizations, all local, all worrying about the people that need help in their areas. The last thing we need is having a big old Washington, D.C., telling us what to do with the homeless in our area. All it does is suck money out of the area. We got to beg for our own money back to try to do things. And it's very ineffective, and we see the results. Government is the problem. Government is not the solution. And not only do we have to beg for our own money back, it comes with conditions that probably won't help the problem or have nothing to do with the problem, but impose other agendas that people in the federal government have that they want to impose on the states. And they blackmail the states into fulfilling these agendas by conditioning the money that they receive from the federal government with it. So not only are we begging for our money back, but we have to do what other people say because we want our own money back. That's just a problem. That's another problem we have to address, but we'll talk about that later. But just remember, in these instances, that somehow the government is making money off a problem, and they are not solving the problem at all. And if you say they're not making money, every time they put somebody in jail, they make a little bit of money. They are for-profit prisons here in the state, so the government may not be making money, but the cronies of government make money. The people who support government are making money, so that makes the government more powerful, and it's just a bad thing. In the case of the panhandlers up in Seminole County, what is a license going to do to help the problem of homeless, to get them off the streets and get them productive? Or even on the other side, what is it going to do to help the people not see panhandlers? Sure, it may reduce the numbers because some panhandlers aren't going to be able to afford a license because the reason they're out panhandling is to beg money from people so they can actually survive. So you relegate those people to, whatever. But then there are going to be some of them that can scrape the money together, or who professional panhandlers and get out there, and you're still going to see the panhandlers. So basically, either scenario, the problem is not solved. We've just got the government involved, so the government gets to make a little money out of it, and people get to feel powerful because they've directed the hammer of government to smash something that they don't like. So what else would a conservative environment look like? I mean, one thing, we would have a whole different bunch of people in office. The people that we need in office are the people who don't want to run for office. Those are the people we need. We don't need the people who are coming forward and saying, hey, I really want to be your... No. We've had enough of that. That whole genre. And I'm not saying everybody who wants to do that is bad. Some of these people have been talked into it, and then they embrace it, and then they move forward. More power to them. But what I'm saying is that we got to find those people, those smart conservatives, those people that understand, the values of our country, who would just laugh at a run. I mean, they're making money. They're in a good place in life, good family. They got the 2.5 kids, the Ferrari and the boat or whatever. Or maybe they're just regular people, a school teacher or a garbage man, but they've taken the time to educate themselves, and they know what's going on. Good common sense people, good salt of the earth people. It'd be very hard, for special interests to buy these people out because they're just going to do what's right. I mean, those are the people we need. The people that say no. You're talking to them, and it's like, man, you're really good. I really like talking to you. You should run for office, and they laugh and say no. You found your politician. That's the person you need to put in office right there. You get that person in office, and I guarantee you your life will be a lot better. And you don't even have to know any of their policy decisions. You don't have to know where they're at on this or that. They are going to do what's right. So, that's another thing that I would like to see, and that we would see as more people get educated. And another aspect that a conservative culture would project would be in the area of the juries. People say, well, what can one person do? What is one of the biggest powers that the people have is in the jury box. Realize that you have a right to a trial by jury. Every citizen of the United States has a right to trial by jury, guaranteed by the Constitution. If it's any criminal case or any civil case, it's going to cost you more than $20. You have a right to a trial by jury. And that's important because what a lot of people don't realize about a jury, and this is where the power of the people really becomes evident, is that not only are you trying to figure out if that person sitting in front of you is guilty or not, you should also be listening to the law and seeing that if the law is unjust. I mean, a lot of people rail against the idea of putting somebody in a cage over smoking a plant. And if you're one of those people, realize that if you're ever in the jury box, you never have to, if you feel that a law is unjust, then you vote no, not guilty. A lot of people don't realize that the 18th Amendment, the prohibition of the sales of alcohol, was overturned in no small part to jury nullification. The prosecutors would go and they would, catch this speakeasy or, whatever, these hidden bars and places, where people were getting drunk, and they would arrest the people. Then they take them to trial. And sitting in the jury box is, Stan and Reginald and old Larry. They were all, they all used to go there and drink, and they're listening to evidence and they realize that all they got to do is say not guilty and that their friend, the bar owner, is going to get off, and that's exactly what they do. And after, you start spending money for cases and you're not getting any cases, after a while the DAs stop wanting to prosecute them. The police stop wanting to arrest you because it's just a big waste of time. Before you know it, the law is being enforced in some areas and not enforced in others. And it's really a patchwork thing, and it's kind of embarrassing, shows the weakness of government. And so what do? You get the 21st Amendment, which is the only amendment that's ever repealed another amendment. And they repealed the 18th Amendment. And that's the power of jury nullification. There were some other forces that were at work, but jury nullification was in no small part as to why prohibition didn't work. So just remember that. Another aspect of a good conservative society would be the realization of human nature. I mean, for instance, the tragedy in Dallas, with the killing of the police officers, actually the assassination of the police officers. We would realize that there are evil people out in the world that have no regard for human life, that have none of the values that earmarks the majority of the rest of civilization, that they're evil and they'll do whatever they want. And we have to realize that those people are going to exist whether we want them to or not. And because having that realization, we would realize that the world can be a dangerous place. Not that it has to be a dangerous place or that in your specific area it is always dangerous, but realize that it is a dangerous place. And with that realization comes the belief that people have the right to protect themselves however they want. So instead of reacting to a tragedy like that by saying that we need to snap up guns and disarm people, we would say just the opposite. That the more guns that are out in society, the safer that people are going to be, and they have a right to that safety or to that peace of mind, whether they ever have to pull a gun or not. If having that gun on them makes them feel better and makes their life more complete, then, it is their right. They are not hurting anybody. They are not infringing on anybody else's rights. And if they do decide one day to infringe on somebody else's rights with that gun, then they are liable to prosecution and they will be taken care of. So we have laws for it. Let's not make any preemptive laws. Let's not detract from society just because some nutcase decides to do something wrong. If you do that, if you consider, if you think that a terrorist shooting somebody up, a proper response to that is to take away people's guns, you've got that completely backwards. That means that the terrorist wins. They change our way of life, and they expend a person or two. They change our way of life. That is a win for the terrorists. That's a win for evil. Don't succumb. And speaking of succumbing, don't succumb to fear. There has been, and I really haven't traced back the roots, but it's been going on for quite a while, just this campaign in fear in all aspects of our life. Look at Ebola. That didn't work out, so now we got the Zika virus. Ooh, watch out, Zika virus. 100 or a couple hundred people out of 300 plus million have it. Ooh, be cautious. Terrorists. We get that shoved in our face all the time. And I'm not saying terrorists aren't bad, but I live in Orlando. We just had a, quote, terror attack, not even 2 miles from my house. Has not changed my worldview in the least. The realizations that I had made before that attack, and the realizations that I continue to make after that attack fit right into my worldview. Do I approve of the attacks? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that it doesn't change my outlook on life. Some other great fear tactics. We have man-made global climate warming change, or whatever they're calling it this week or this year. Enough said there. You have experts saying that you get too much sun. Other experts saying you get too little sun and you're in danger of something. You exercise, and if you're exercising, it's great, but you can exercise too much, so you got to be careful there. Fear everywhere. I don't know how many of you, listen to George Carlin when he was around, but he had this great bit, that scientists have finally determined that swallowing that saliva causes cancer, but it only does so when swallowed in very small amounts over very long periods of time. He was making fun of it back in the 70s of this fear culture. Look at our elections this year. Democrats and Republicans, it is all about the fear. I'm not supposed to vote for Donald Trump. I'm supposed to vote against Hillary Clinton because she's going to be 8 more years of Obama, and she's going to be a destruction of our way of life. She's going to put liberal justices on the Supreme Court, so we're going to lose all of our God-given rights and all kinds of bad things. I think it's going to rain cats and dogs, and I mean, bad things are going to happen if Hillary gets in there. So you better vote Trump. And if you're not voting Trump, then that means that you're helping Hillary get in there. If you're not voting for Trump, then it is definitely a vote for Hillary no matter who. If you're voting for Castler, or if you're voting for Johnson, or you're voting for anybody else other than Trump, then you are voting for Hillary. It doesn't matter what you marked on the card. It's actually a vote for Hillary, so just remember that. Don't do it. And then on the other side of the aisle, the people who want you to vote for Hillary, they're not saying why. I mean, listing Hillary's accomplishments, I mean, that is a joke. She passed like a couple of bills in the Senate, which were very inconsequential. Her time at the State Department, when you do talk about it, it's in hushed tones because there's nothing good to say. I mean, the Arab Spring, Benghazi, that was a huge success. Uranium to Russia, they're $6 billion short. Her email scandal, no, not so much. I don't think there's really anything you want to say positive about Hillary. But what you do talk about is the homophobic, misogynistic, warmongering Cheeto head Trump. He's going to push the button. You put him in office, he's going to have a temper tantrum. He's going to push the button, so you can't vote for him. You got to vote for Hillary. If you vote for anybody else other than Hillary, it's a vote for Trump. It doesn't matter if you vote for if you're voting for anybody else but Hillary, then it's a vote for Trump, so you better vote for Hillary. I mean, whatever. It's a whole bunch of fear. And that's what they're running on. And all we're seeing is, we just saw the whole Comey go in front of Congress, and Gowdy did a very good job. There are some other people too, that had Comey saying stuff, but basically they just tore Hillary apart. This is a race for the bottom, folks. This is a fear campaign. Hillary's just been torn down, so Trump's going to get a little support, but don't worry, there's a few hundred reporters out there who, after he gets the nomination, if that's going to happen, there seems to be a lot of people trying to make sure that doesn't happen this year. But if he does get the nomination, you're going to see all kinds of stories coming out, just yanking Trump on down. But don't worry, there's a whole bunch of stuff on Hillary there's people that are born, that are voting this year, who weren't even alive when Hillary Clinton was crafting, her lies and deception. The early foundation of her life was being crafted, like in the Watergate investigation, where she was kicked off of the staff because of unethical behavior, to, Whitewater and Cattlegate and Travelgate and, stuff that happened in Arkansas. It's just, so people are, like I said, people who are alive right now are going to have to dig into history before they were alive to look into her record to see where her start of corruption came for. So there's all these forces that are just going to drag this down straight into the mud. So who are you going to fear more? Are you going to fear Hillary more? Or are you going to fear Trump more? Whoever you fear more, the other person's going to win. So good luck with that. And the last thing I'll talk about when I talk about a more conservative society would be some of my imaginings on what future government would look like. First of all, the federal level, the elimination of most federal departments, and those tasks of those federal departments devolving back down to the states or to the people. I'm talking about getting rid of the EPA, the FDA, the BLM, the USDA. Basically, you put 3 or 4 letters together, and that federal agency needs to go. I'm not saying that their duties have to go, but I'm saying is that it properly is handled at the state level in our constitutional republic, and that's where it needs to go, where we actually have control over what goes on in our state. If a state's doing something to another state, we have mechanisms in place to hold people accountable. We just need to do that. We don't need to be preemptive and, give away our freedom for security. That never works. It never has, and it never will. Another thing that we'll be looking at is the elimination of the IRS. And in in a truly healthy United States of America, what we'll see is that taxes are going to be collected by the states, and a certain portion of those will be distributed to the federal government for their proper constitutional operation. That'll be another check on the federal government. Another big change that I would see would be the elimination of the Federal Reserve. You know, that cabal of international money men, globalist, Marxist, anti-American guys and ladies and gentlemen who are just there to make money off the backs of America. Did you know that Thomas Jefferson was more concerned with international bankers than he was a standing army? And I don't know if you know his position on a standing army, but he was one of the ones that was right up at the forefront of figuring out that a standing army was bad to the long-term liberties of a nation. A little aside, because I did bring it up, a little story about the Federal Reserve. A lot of people don't realize this. First of all, it's a private corporation. There is nothing federal about it. It is not run by the government. If you don't believe me, you can go to YouTube and you can see Alan Greenspan. Just search in YouTube Alan Greenspan's role of government in the Federal Reserve or something to those words, and you will get him on an interview where he specifically asks the question of the involvement with the federal government and the Federal Reserve, and he answers it just like I did. There is no control the federal government has over the Federal Reserve. So what does the Federal Reserve do? For the cost of ink, paper, and printing, they get to charge us a huge debt on this fiat money that they issue. So a lot of that national debt that you see is owed to this cabal and the Federal Reserve. I mean, it's a big scheme. And we, the taxpayers, are paying for it. And actually, we're not even paying for it. That's what we have a big old debt for, because we can't pay for it. It's so big that we can't afford to pay for this scheme that they're running. So they just keep printing more money to pay themselves off, which in turn makes the money that we all hold worth less. And before you know it, it's eventually going to be worthless. So let's just keep on going with the Federal Reserve. Remember, they've never been audited. So what I would see in a conservative movement is that we would go back to the constitutional mandate. It's right there in Article 1, Section 8 that something about, and I don't remember the exact wording, but it's the Congress shall have the right to coin money and to establish the value thereof, or something like that. Basically, they're allowed to make money and say how much it's worth. So that's one of the powers that they have, which they're not doing. Instead of doing the stuff they're supposed to be doing, they pawn that off to someone else, and they do stuff they're not supposed to be doing. So, let's just get back to the stuff they're supposed to be doing, hold them so we can hold them accountable. Another thing I'd like to see, or that will be seen in a true conservative movement, would be the repeal of the 17th Amendment. The direct election of senators upsets one of the primary checks and balances of our republic. It's there for a reason. It sounds like a good idea, electing the senator, more democracy, more voice of people, but no, it's actually a check and a balance. That was the state seat at the federal table. The people had the House of Representatives, the state had the Senate, and that was part of the power. Had the power distribution, and now we've kind of got away from that, and we need to get back to it. And another thing too, and this is a big one that's very applicable to what we're seeing today, is realize that the Supreme Court, which consists of politically connected lawyers, they issue opinions, which the people take into consideration when making decisions. I mean, they don't issue laws. It's not a mandate, it's an opinion. Remember, our constitutionally protected right to a trial by jury. The Supreme Court doesn't tell us what the law is. That's ridiculous. They were created by the Constitution, and if you think they have a final say over it, that means that you think they have ultimate power over the way we live our lives in the United States, and you don't understand what a constitutional republic is. And if people try to say that to you, just realize how ridiculous that sounds. Basically, if you say that the Supreme Court is the final arbiter of the Constitution, you give the federal government, of which the Supreme Court is 1/3 of, the power to decide what powers they do and don't have. And that is not the way that our constitutional republic was founded. But anyway, back to the point that the Supreme Court issues an opinion. And since we have a constitutional right to a trial, or a constitution protected right to a trial by jury, that means their opinions are supposed to be given to us, given to other, to the people of the lands, given to the juries of the land, saying, look, these are what these, studied lawyers think. That they don't say this is law, but this is their interpretation of the facts. And that's all it is. And when we get back to into a more conservative and more educated society, we're going to see much more of that kind of thinking. Well, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed yourself, or at the very least, I hope you learned something new today. This is Frank Caprio, and you've been listening to Constitutional Cappuccino. I'll finish up with a couple of quick quotes. The first from John Adams: "Liberty cannot be preserved without general knowledge among the people." And then from Louis Brandeis: "Those who won our independence valued liberty as an end and as a means. They believed liberty to be the secret of happiness, and courage to be the secret of liberty."